At 6 o'clock in the Winthrop High School Library. Will you please stand for Pledge of Allegiance? In the back of the room. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to take a minute to congratulate school committee member Laura Callis. She had her baby last week, a boy named Kennedy, so I'd like to take a minute. She said she's going to be watching us on TV, so congratulations, Laura and Matt. All right. Yes, Bill.
If I may, if we can take out of new business, the student council, students are in the back. If we move them from the back to the front, just to get the students out of here.
Would you like to take it right now before public comment?
That's up to you. Just
okay, let's do roll call, and then we can take that next if no one objects. Ms. Haynes?
Yes. Mr. Capabianco?
Present.
Mr. Holden?
yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Here.
Mr. Vecchia?
Here.
Mr. Perrin? Ms. Sullivan?
Yes, present. All right, so help me, Bill. What is it that you'd like to take out of order?
The second line item after new business, travel request from Winthrop High School Student Council. I believe they have members here and someone's here to speak.
Okay. If there's no objection, I'll take the travel request for the Winthrop High School Student Council and for the conference in Hyannis.
Hello. The Winthrop High School Student Council asks for the school committee's permission to travel down to Hyannis, Cape Cod to attend the 39th Massachusetts Association of Student Councils annual spring conference. The MASC Spring Conference is held annually to provide students with both motivational and educational experiences. The 3-day, 2-night conference is held at the Resort and Conference Center at Hyannis and Cape Codder Hotel. These 3 days are full of events, motivational speeches, workshops, awards, and entertainment, and are a rewarding experience for any student leader. Attendees are trained in areas of leadership and are allowed to network with students from across Massachusetts and celebrated as student leaders for their achievements throughout the year. Winthrop High School's delegation is made up of 21 students accompanied by advisor Jen Droney and Dan Curran. They will be staying at the Resort and Conference Center at Hyannis between the dates of March 9th through the 11th. All students are responsible for missed work and will return to school the following Monday, March 14th. During their time, they will be supporting candidate for the state vice president, Hunter Gillis. The cost of this trip is $360 and will be transported by the Viking Pride bus along with Saugus High School.
Do you two want to state your names?
Brian Theron.
Julia Duplin?
Thank you, welcome. So there's supervision?
Yes, there's 2 chaperones from Winthrop going.
And how many students are going?
There's 21 of us.
Are there any questions from the committee for the students?
Is this the conference where there's a formal wear dinner?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I may, having experienced it, gone down with them in the past, it's a wonderful occasion, and our student council, they handled themselves with class and dignity. I would strongly recommend to the school committee that they approve this. Our student council in the past, and I anticipate you to do it again, is usually gets recognized quite a bit down there for their awards and for all of their community spirit that they have. So I applaud this group.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Mr. Holden, seconded by Mr. Capabianco, to approve the request?
Yes, as written.
Any discussion on the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right,
Have fun.
the motion
Thank
passes
you.
unanimously. Thank you, and have a great trip. All right. So, that's settled. Next on the agenda, we have Mr. Liederman for delegates and visitors. Mr. Liederman, would you like to come and have a seat for us up here?
She wants you to sit.
Welcome.
Thank you.
You're here tonight to talk about the Winthrop High School Hall of Fame.
Yes, I am. Do you mind if I stand?
Whatever you're more comfortable doing, sir.
Thank you. Ms. Sullivan, members of the school committee, superintendent of schools. My name is Jim Liederman. I'm chairman of the Winthrop High School Hall of Fame. First, let me tell you a little bit about the Hall of Fame for those members that aren't aware of what we do. Okay? It's been in existence since 1997. I've been the chairman for the last 11 years.
Thank you.
So if you take a minute to read this letter, it's from my committee. And what we've proposed is, for the past 11 years, we've used the Elks to hold our induction, okay? So I'm going to leave you also for a minute. You can take a look at the book. This explains the rules, the regulations of the Winthrop High School Athletic Hall of Fame. There are presently 105 members that have been inducted since 1997. My committee consists of myself, Howie Conley, who's with me tonight, John Domenico, who's 88 years old, former principal of Winthrop High School. We have Peg Bailey, Coach Dale Dunbar, Richard Milano, Attorney Chris Ciotis, and we're proud to have the athletic director, Matt Serino, a member of our committee, and also Matt Crombie, the principal of Winthrop High School. So as I mentioned, we have held this before at the Elks, and previous to that it was at the Winthrop Yacht Club. But we're quite excited about the new high school, and John Domenico spoke with the superintendent of schools back in November and asked him what he thought about our request to use the new high school to have our induction for the class of 2016. So we are proposing 2 nights. You have it on your letter, in October, and we hope to hold the ceremony in the new auditorium, and if possible, use the cafeteria to have a buffet. If there are any expenses that we incur as far as janitors or anything, we'll be glad to take care of them. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Lederman. Is there any questions about the proposal? Well, it sounds like it's very exciting, and I'm glad that you're all excited to be a part of the new building as well. So we're glad that you had the forethought to think about having your ceremony there. If there's any question about paperwork to fill out for buildings request, Ms. Hames can help you in the office.
That's great.
Thank you, Mr. Lederman, for your time.
Thank you. When will we hear your decision?
Yes, Bill?
Well, I'll confer, I think we need to wait to see when the building's open and if everything's up and running right, but Mr. Massaro will make that call.
I think that we don't have any
Yeah.
intention of not approving it. It'll just,
Great.
and, we can certainly pencil in the dates. Will it be one or the other date?
Yes.
Or both dates, one or the other? So
One or the
we
other.
can definitely pencil it in. If other people are requesting those dates, we can have Ms. Hames give you a call. But as soon as you know which date and as soon as we know we have the keys to the school,
Okay.
we'd be happy to work with you.
Well, we have our meetings starting we'll have one this month, but the vote for the members of the new Hall of Fame will be in August. But we like to promote it a little bit, so if we could know possibly by June.
So can I just?
Yes, sir.
So the best bet is to see Ms. Hames tomorrow, stop by and get the sheet and just fill out the request. I know you put this form in, but
Right.
fill out the paperwork request. And then we can, at the next committee, we can recommend it upon that we're open, for that school so that you
Sounds
can
great.
have that date.
Right.
I can recommend to the
Right.
school committee. But I'm
Okay.
also when Mr. Domenico spoke to me about it, I thought it was a great opportunity to bring to you folks, because I think that's where it should be held, is at
Of
Winthrop High
course.
School.
Yeah, sure.
The Hall of Fame, so.
Yeah, it'll be a nice opportunity for the members to see the new building as well.
Before I leave, I'd like to congratulate the superintendent and members of the school committee, and especially members of the building committee. It's certainly a pleasure and a joy, the new high school, so good luck to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just take that from you. Thank you. Thank you, John.
Next on the agenda, we have public comment. Is there any public comment tonight? Okay. Seeing no public comment, we'll take a look at the minutes for approval from our last meeting on January 25th. Was that our last meeting?
Yes.
That wasn't the meeting that was canceled?
No.
Oh, right, sorry. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from January 25th? Motion from Mr. President Driscoll. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Holden. Any discussion on the minutes? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? It looks like it. The motion passes. The minutes are approved. All right. Next on the agenda, we have the warrants for approval. Do I have a motion to take them together?
I'll make that motion.
President Driscoll and Mr. Capabianco seconds the motion. We have warrant SVW 16-13 in the amount of $134,752.28. A warrant SVW 16-4 in the amount of $155,347.61. And a payroll warrant December 2nd, 2015 in the amount of $666,133.98. All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Looks like the motion passes unanimously. Did we include the budget transfers in that? Susan, are you all set? Did we include the budget transfers in that?
Did you?
Is there,
There is budget transfers.
I don't think that motion, the motion was on the warrant, so I think you have to do it.
okay. It just says budget transfers. I don't have any amount or number in front of me.
Is that in the packet?
Yeah, usually we don't put an amount.
Oh, okay.
It's just, no.
Okay. So I will make a motion to approve the budget transfers that were in the packet. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by President Driscoll. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Some
Yes.
comments?
Yes, please.
On the budget
Oh, sorry,
transfers?
discussion, of course.
The school department decreased computers by 10,444.
No, it
And
went
put it to
from-
what's SIS?
It's the systems that we use, and it went from one technology line to another.
Okay, and then I'm just, not concerned, but curious, the transportation for homeless was decreased 40,000, did we just,
Yes, we're moving it from one transportation line to another.
okay. And that was the same with the van drivers, that was moved somewhere else?
That's moved, yes.
Okay, and the legal services, what was the initial budget? I mean, I'm looking at next year's, it's at 24,000.
It was about 24, but we had things that came up that we didn't anticipate.
Okay, so we basically went from 24 to, what, 47?
Yeah.
Okay.
So one question too, the transportation out of district, we're moving 80,000 into that,
Yes,
and 80,000 was also budgeted for that.
yes.
So that total is $160,000.
In transportation?
Close, yeah.
Yes.
And the contingency, what's left in that now, if we're taking 99 from it?
I'm not sure off the top of my head. Let me see.
And is that a concern until we get to the end of the school year, having it depleted that much?
I don't believe it's a concern
Okay.
at all on that. What should be in the contingency is money that we still have.
It's
in-
about maybe 30,000 left in it.
Remaining?
Yep.
Is that separate from the negotiation part? Or is that
Yes,
part of it?
separate.
And that's separate from what still remains in the negotiations.
All right, thank you.
Is there any more discussion on the motion for budget transfers? Okay. All in favor for the budget transfer approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? It's unanimous. The budget transfers pass. Next on the agenda is buildings and grounds. We have, are these two separate ones, Winark and Winthrop Girls?
They're all in there.
I would like to take those separately tonight. There's a request of grounds from Is it before this? Is this it? I'm sorry, I'm just finding it here. Is that it right there? Can I just read that? Okay. And this is,
Is
Where's the Monty plan?
Just that one. I'm sorry, I have one in my packet here from Parks and
Yeah,
Rec.
what? Yeah.
Yeah, Patty just handed me this. So there's more than two. There's two written on the agenda is what I'm, oh, I see. Okay. Okay, I don't want to take these together tonight. We have a request tonight, thank you, Mr. Holden, from Winthrop for I'm sorry, Patty, I'm going by this.
Yep, Winark is for Special Olympics.
Okay.
At the Fort Banks Gym.
Okay,
Yep, and then you've got 2 basketball requests, and then you have a bunch from Parks and Recs.
okay. So the first one tonight, we have a request for the Winthrop for the Special Olympics on Sundays, beginning February. Has this already started?
It did.
Okay. On Sundays from February through March for the Special Olympics. And they have returned payment and custodial fees. Is there a motion to approve that request?
Make that motion.
By Mr. Vecchia, is
I'll
there a
second.
second? By Mr. Holden, all in favor, or discussion of that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Next, we have a Parks and Rec has 2 requests. I'll make a motion to take those together. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of taking those 2 requests together for Parks and Rec, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. So we'll take those 2 requests together. Therefore, Saturday's Family Fun Night, which is a Winthrop Parks Committee event, and the Easter egg hunt, which is Saturday, March 19th. That's coming right up, right? In the Winthrop Gym cafeteria, and they have sent that in with 2 purchase orders. Is there a motion for approval of those 2 requests? Mr. Vecchia, is there a second? President Driscoll, all in favor say, any discussion on that motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstentions, that motion passes. There's a buildings request for the Aristocats wanting to use the William P. Gorman Gymnasium for the model airplane contests on Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. They have sent that in with custodial fees. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Without rental fees.
Correct.
Okay. So the Aristocats are an organization. Do you know what kind of organization that is?
They're a nonprofit organization, and they run the model airplane contests at the
Okay.
Fort Banks Gym.
So they have sent in custodial fees, but not use of grounds rental fees for that time.
That's correct.
And it is our policy that when nonprofit organizations use our space, we have a hourly rental fee for our space. That was not collected. Typically, we do not approve requests until it comes in with full payment, is our policy. Is there any discussion or question about that?
What's the date request?
It is for Saturday, the 27th, which would be before our next meeting. It's this coming Saturday.
I know we've had them before, but is there a reason why they didn't submit it? Did they miscommunication or what?
I think there might have been a
'Cause
miscommunication
they've done this
in the
before.
office.
So
Yeah,
they should
they've
know.
been doing it for years. So. it's
Do we,
just
do we have a contact with them?
Yep, Mr. Lang, I can get in touch with him.
So could we approve it pending we receive payments for the last one? Could we do that?
The payment for this next one that we're trying to
Yeah,
approve.
do we, yeah, cool. That's what I mean, yeah.
What, Mr. President Driscoll?
This may get us into the next 2, but
Yes.
what exactly is the policy with respect to groups using
Mhm.
the
Did you
facility?
have that?
Policy is in the packet.
I can read it. Yeah, I don't want to read the entire policy.
Yeah.
Part 3, this is in our packet. Part 3, there will be no rental fee for school buildings and school property for government, church, charitable organizations. Individuals and organizations using the facility not-for-profit will pay a rental fee of $25 per hour in addition to the custodial fees. If school is in session and a sufficient number of custodians are on duty, the financial manager will determine whether that's required. All fees must be paid within 60 days. Any individual organization or department that is behind in payment for more than 60 days will be denied for use of school property. I thought we updated this last year. Did we not update this last year?
We did.
Okay. That payment, it has to come with the request?
Right.
This is saying all fees must be paid within 60 days. Within 60 days of what? You see what I'm saying? Seeing in number 7,
Mhm.
superintendent?
Yep. Number 7 I have is required.
57.
All fees. I know that we have followed the original policy, which was that they all had to be paid for before they were approved. And so I'll have to look at why that says that in 7. If I can add,
Yes.
if I may, just in regards to the Aristocrats and to the 7th grade basketball association on those areas.
That we have not brought up yet.
Right. Is it okay if I bring it up
Yes.
on this? All right. So what occurred was when they came to file and fill out, we took everything in and we put it in as process as we normally do. And we forgot to remind them about the $25 fee on that. And so I'm looking at it in the sense that it was our mistake on that. We did not request that, and now to go and request that after seems like, it was our mistake on this particular issue. I would like to ask the school committee if they would waive that request for this time only for both of those organizations, and we'll make sure that we fulfill that policy as we move forward on that. Because the $25 was created last year, it came on it, and we've been so used to nonprofit not paying anything in those facilities that at this time it was just on our part, we forgot on that. And so I just feel out of good business sense to those two organizations that have requested it, because they didn't anticipate that expense. Granted, they may have gotten the paperwork, and they should have looked at that as well, and I understand that, but I'm asking the school committee to possibly waive that for this purpose only.
So, what would need to happen first is that we would require a vote to waive the policy, and then we would go ahead and approve or not the request. So, I would like to make a motion to waive the policy for collecting rental fee for these two specific requests tonight. And a motion to waive a policy requires a 2/3 vote to approve it. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us here right now. So.
I think you're safe.
All right, so here's my motion to waive the policy for the rental fee for these two requests this evening. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Is there a discussion on the motion? Patty, will you call roll, please, for the
Yes.
vote?
Mr. Capabianco?
Yes.
Mr. Holden?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mr. Vecchia?
Yes.
Ms. Sullivan?
Yes. Okay, so now I would like to make a motion to approve the Aristocats and the 7th grade basketball association, which is requesting Mondays and Thursday nights, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. from March 13th to May 5th for basketball practice. Do I hear a second?
Second.
By President Driscoll. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? It's unanimous. The motion passes. And the last buildings and grounds request is the Winthrop girls AAU basketball for basketball practice 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. Whoa, those girls are up late. Friday nights from, at least there's not school the next day, from March 18th to May 6th. Is there a motion to approve that request?
I'll
Mr.
make a
Vecchia?
motion. I'll second.
Mr. Capabianco can second that motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you, Patty. Did we cover all those?
There he is.
Did you waive the fees for this one?
Yeah, they did.
Okay. All right, where's my agenda? Let's keep going here. It's a long night. I lost my agenda. Sorry. Here it is.
You're up to,
Curriculum. In light of the presentation that we would like to spend time on tonight, we are going to move right over to subcommittee reports and superintendent reports, passing over curriculum tonight. So, subcommittee reports. Mr. Caprianco, did you have a subcommittee of, what did you have, budget?
We have budget, and we met on February 1st in the Harvey hearing room. School committee members present on the committee were Ms. Callis, Ms. Sullivan, Mr. Holden was present, and I was present as well. Others are in attendance were Mr. Macero, Ms. Eccles, Councilor Terry, Karen Chavis, and the CFO. Topics covered were the 2016-2017 preliminary budget proposal, and we did not take any votes at that meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Holden, did you have an athletic subcommittee this morning?
Yes, we had this morning, John Macero, Matt Serino, Susan Eccles, Jim Lettieri, Phil Lumber, Karen Chavez, Ron Vecchia, Tino, and myself, and Sean Driscoll were in attendance. No votes were taken. Policy was on the agenda, and it needs some attention. As you can just see, you had an issue with an updated policy. Going through the policy book, there seems to be items not in it, and so we need to look at policies and how they're recorded and updated and kept. So we basically, there's no other discussion beyond policies need to be fixed.
Was there one or two specific policies that were most concerning?
Well, actually, discussion was creating an index for athletics. We referred to the student handbook, so now it's kind of confusion is what in the handbook policy or is it not policy?
Right.
So we need to have more discussion and figure that out.
Okay.
The hour and a half meeting, we had long discussion on user fees, which, went back to the budget and, budget with the user fees. Good dialogue, a lot of suggestions. User fees have not been set. We deferred it to Matt Serino getting more information for the committee and Mr. Macero looking at some more budget items before we go forward and set user fees and policies and what we're going to do with sports. We're not looking at lowering the quality of sports. We're not looking to really raise user fees, which we're doing our best not for that to happen. And there'll be no more expansion of sports. We pretty much fulfilled all, Title IX and other space. We've utilized every space, every season available. So sign up, I believe, is tomorrow night with student athletes, so we'll get a better feel on how many students are going to participate in each sport. And that was pretty much it. Is there anything else? Do you know? No, that was pretty much, so again, no votes were taken, but there will be another meeting in 2 weeks, and we hope to set user fees.
Great, thank you, Mr. Holden.
Madam Chairman, is that meeting March 10th, that Thursday? 'Cause
Thursday.
That's 2 weeks from this Thursday. Just want to make sure, unless you wanted to do it March 3rd. Wasn't sure on how that.
I think that Thursday at 5 o'clock was agreeable to everyone in that room.
That March 10th.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
Karen's gonna bring snacks for us.
That's after school committee.
Right.
Do you want to
So-
have Patty post that or send her an email later?
Sure.
So that meeting will be after the next school committee meeting? 'Cause
Yeah,
the next
okay.
one, okay, I just want
That's
to make
fine.
sure you're aware, because at first you had said that you wanted to do it before it. Okay.
Well, you said we have time before.
We do, we
Yeah.
do.
Okay, the next subcommittee that was held since our last meeting was the policy subcommittee meeting, and Mrs. Callis is chairperson of that. I will present for her tonight because I was also in attendance, as was Mr. Capabianco, Mr. Perrin, Superintendent Macero, and Mr. Woods. I think that was it. What was up for discussion that night was the naming of facilities, and we did make some minor revisions, and as well as retirement of facilities, which will be coming up soon, hopefully. There's some minor revisions in that as well. The first reading would be tonight. The second reading and the adoption will be at our next meeting. Would anybody like me to do a first reading of these two policies? Would you like me to read them?
No, motion to waive the first reading.
Motion to waive the reading by Mr. Perrin. Is there a second? By Mr. Vecchia. Is there any discussion on that motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? It looks like the motion passes unanimously. All right, so those are our subcommittees. And we're on to superintendent report. Are you ready, Mr. Massaro?
I am ready.
All
And
right,
so
let's have it.
just for point of order, you took care of the, under new business, first
Travel
readings.
request?
So on the, you took care of travel requests and you've taken care of the first readings of the policies, right?
Yes.
So we're all set on that.
Yes.
Did you want to do the baseball team quickly, or do you want me to just go right into the budget and then we can do that after?
Okay. Any opposition to taking the baseball team request out of order? Except for poor Patty here has to dig through a pile and find the baseball request.
I've got it right here. I
Okay,
can read it if
perfect.
you'd like.
If you wouldn't mind, thank you.
The Winthrop High School Student Council asked for, oh no, that's the Student Council, I'm sorry. Here it is right here, baseball. The Winthrop baseball team would be pleased to host their 16th annual Little League fundraiser on March 7th to the 11th in the Winthrop High Gym from 3:45 to 5:30. The cost is $75. This year's funds will be used for new uniforms, equipment, and general need of the team that come up during the season. It has also been a great connection with the community as the fundraiser has been sold out every year since we've been hosting it. Thank you for your consideration, Frank DeMarco, the varsity baseball coach.
Make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Mr. Capianico. I will second that. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Approved the Little League fundraiser request. Okay, so now you are on, Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you. So tonight in the superintendent's report, I'd like to go right to the budget presentation, budget proposal for 2017. What I'd like to do is, you know that I've given this out to members of the school committee. I've also sent it to members of the finance committee as well. What I'd like to do is I'm going to actually start with page 16 myself and read to you what I believe the rising to the challenge. Yes, Mr. Holden.
Just so we're all on the same page here, want to hold questions to the end of the presentation, or? Okay. just leave it.
I mean, I would. Let's
Okay.
see what Mr.
Just so-
Superintendent has to say, and we'll take notes, and we'll have a discussion at the end. Thank you, Mr.
I would
Holden.
appreciate that, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah,
That way it's.
He may be answering questions that we have, so we'll just be
So-
more efficient.
So, one of the things that I would like to have happen with this budget proposal is that, let me just talk about the procedure here. Tonight, I will give you a budget proposal that has come through myself and the leadership team. On March 7th, that is a public forum where the public has an opportunity to come and voice their opinions in regards to the budget, to the school committee. We ask under the town charter that by the end of March, which we do have a meeting on March 21st, that the school committee approve a recommended budget that goes to the town manager. It is at that point where the town manager will take that recommended budget and decipher whether or not he goes with your recommendations or determines another sum, and then he submits that budget by the end of April to the finance committee, who then will look it over and make their suggestions. And in the end, the total decision comes down to the town council of what budget is approved and what those numbers are. Normally what happens at that point is that budget will come back, and that budget in the past has been slightly different from the budget that has been requested. And if that's the case, then we have to go in to have other questions on that, but that's getting ahead of the thing. Tonight, it's about proposing what we are looking for in the new budget for fiscal 16-17. So if I may, I'm going to just read this because I worked on it hard. I want to make sure that people understand what I'm saying, and I want to read it to the public. Providing quality public education to a diverse student population is exciting work. Winthrop Public Schools rises to meet that challenge with resources that include a 4% budget increase for fiscal 17. Within a few months, the brand new Winthrop High Middle School will be unveiled. We are proud to announce that as of March 1st, 2016, we continue to be on time and on budget with this truly magnificent and innovative project. It's an exciting time for our school community as we prepare to unveil this project.
Over the past 2 years, while we have been in swing space mode, our students and staff have made many sacrifices in regards to space. Consolidating 4 schools into 3 has not been an easy task. However, our students and staff rose to this challenge. Winthrop Public Schools, while maintaining its Level 2 status, still made significant gains from its previous 2 years by increasing all schools' percentile status in the state. Most notable is the Arthur T. Cummins movement from a 38 percentile in 2014 to 61 percentile in 2015. There's still lots of work to be done to close our achievement gaps, but we're moving in the right direction, and we feel we are closing the gap and are within reach of Level 1. In a sense, growth is what education is all about. Winthrop Public Schools challenges our students by creating a rich environment in which to grow, including curricula, technology, athletics, technical training, social supports, fine arts, and more. Due to the consolidation, we were able to offer more innovative opportunities for all students. Students in lower grades had options that were not available to them in previous years. These enrichment opportunities have allowed programs to grow and children to prosper. Moving forward, we must continue to offer and look to expand these programs throughout the district, providing equitable opportunities and resources to all Winthrop Public School students. As we embark on a new school year, we will continue to work together to offer the best possible education to all of our students. Given the restraints of the town's financial picture, it is true that even with the funds we have requested, there will still be reductions. This, of course, is an unfortunate reality. However, it is the superintendent's responsibility to ensure all dollars allocated by the town of Winthrop are being well spent for all students at all times and continues to move the Winthrop Public Schools forward in a forward direction. I'd like to thank the Winthrop School Committee and the town manager for their continued commitment to the education of Winthrop's children. Your commitment to our students allows us to continue our work, creating a 21st century school system that provides a vibrant, innovative learning environment and meets the needs of each and every one of our children. Tonight, if we can go back, Mr. Woods, to the beginning. Tonight, you'll see that I have here with me my colleagues on the leadership team, Susan Eccles. We have Jennifer O'Connell from the Special Ed Department, Pupil Personnel Director. We have Matthew Crombie, Principal of Winthrop High School. Ryan Herity, Principal of the Arthur T. Cummings. Eileen Pearson, Principal of the William P. Gorman Fort Bank School. As many of you may know or may not know at this time, I am happy to report that Mr. Curley was totally unanimous selection out of the search committee to become the future middle school principal next year. However, Mr. Curley is unable to attend tonight because it was at the last second, but I understand that Mr. Curley, I sat with Mr. Curley to review stuff. In this budget proposal that we will present at the first of the time, when I met with the principals, they have started this proposal since October. They submitted me budgets back in December and in January, and when I received the budget actually in December, November and December, when I received it over the holiday break back at the Christmas time, the budget, when I put it all together, was at 19.5, which was about 2.2 million request more than we currently have. Moving forward, I felt that, and listening to last year when I met with the Finance Committee, and I'm pleased to say tonight that we have members of the Finance Committee here, the Chairman, Mr. Wynn, Karen Chavez, and Barbara Clavin, who are also on the Finance Committee, are here, as well as Jim Lettieri, who is a member of the FinCom from the Town Council. I don't think I'm leaving anybody else, am I? Don't wanna, okay. Oh, I see our former president, Mr. Gill, back there, so. So my goal was to make sure that when we go and request an amount of money, that we can request an amount of money that is going to be attainable in this. And so when I looked at the budget, I have put together a budget that includes the total amount that I'm requesting is $18,191,309.52, which is a 4% increase. So, let us walk you through some of the budget guidelines that we all came through as we looked at it. And one other tidbit I'd like to add is that after I over the holiday break, put the budget together from taking what the principals gave me. I then again met with each principal and each director and reviewed what those budget items that I was looking at. And we came to an agreement in those line items that we talked about that you will see now as we move forward, that's within the budget of what 18,190 was going to look like. Student achievement should drive all budget decisions. Budget should promote improvement for all students, including students with disabilities and English language learners, as well as appropriate academic challenge for high-achieving students. Elementary school budgets must anticipate increasing enrollments and support new technology initiatives and intervention programs aimed at increasing the overall academic, social success of all students. The middle school budget should provide a superior academic and social experience that prepares all students for success in high school and post-secondary education. Funds should be directed towards developing a social and emotional learning and support system. At the high school, programs should provide the academic, social, and extracurricular excellence we have come to expect, with support, guidance, and favorable class sizes available for all students. Program and curriculum evaluations will ensure that students receive excellent instruction and coherent, high-quality curriculum. Family engagement efforts should promote welcoming environments for all families, and this budget should also support improved communications about our successes. School climate should be safe, supportive, nurturing, and inclusive. Student and staff health and safety, as well as faculty diversity, are among our priorities. And finally, operations and long-range planning decisions will be based on ongoing review and assessments of needs in the areas of staffing, curriculum, facilities, technology, and sustainability. The next page shows you the operating budget over the last 5 years. And you will see that we have had an increase over the last 5 years. Generally, the average yearly increase has been a 2.79% that the town has supported over into the operating budget. Occasionally, a couple of years, we were above that, and then 1 year we were below that. So there's, that's part of what, here I am asking for a 4%, and you can see what in the past has been, but I'm trying to drive that as we move forward. If you take a look at the Chapter 70 trends, so Chapter 70, for folks that may not be aware, Chapter 70 money is money that is allocated by the state of Massachusetts. How that funding, if you can figure out the funding, then you're a genius, but technically the real way the funding is, it's based on your number of students that you have as of October 1st in your current system, and if they're free and reduced or they have directed services, then you will receive additional funding through the formula that they put together on that. I will tell you that Chapter 70 has been under, people have been working at trying to not investigate it, I'm looking for the right word.
Scrutinized.
Yeah, it's been scrutinized, and they're trying to redo it, and it just seems that we're told that every year, but it hasn't happened to its max yet. But as you can see, though, the red on here is the Chapter 70 fund. So the state is releasing these Chapter 70s, but then they're telling us, okay, this is your foundation budget, and you can see our foundation budgets are growing, but then they're telling the towns that this is your required net school spending, which is that black line that's on it. And then the actual net school spending is what Winthrop has given the schools. So we are actually getting more than the required net school spending from the town. But when you also take a look at these types of things that you have to do, and you'll see later as I go into it, there are some costs, like for example, special education, that is never taken into consideration in that Chapter 70, because special education increases just like this, but what happens is we're only still getting funded what this level is for regular education, and that's where that Chapter 70 needs to be revised as they take a look at that. But we also have a lot of mandated expenditures, and mandated expenditures are ELL services, out-of-district tuitions, and some transportation expenditures. And you'll see that in our ELL services, we've increased from 191,571 in fiscal 12 to fiscal 16, which is now 289,249 this current year, and we're going to increase again next year because we need to add ELL services at the middle school. Our out-of-district tuitions, we've kind of gone, you know, at one point when we first walked in, and I'm actually, I want to applaud some of the work that we've done here on these out-of-district students. We've been able to at times decrease that number or at least level it off over the course of the few years, which means that it may not mean that we're bringing some of those students back, but we're creating programs within the system to keep students from having to go out of the district. And so that's why we've been able to keep that number at a level. And then transportation is a yo-yo. I mean, you look at the numbers, you had in fiscal 12, you had 18,037, which we were reimbursed part of that monies when that came. And then in 13, we didn't have any homeless expenditures. But then 14 and 15, you'll see that our homeless expenditures went from 40 to 47,000 up to 83,000 last year. And this year we're currently at 13,000. So we're back down. We have homeless of 9 particular students in that category. And what's helping us on that is that not all of those students are requiring the transportation cost that you have. And just so that you're aware, in a homeless, if a student comes to Winthrop because they're homeless and they come to Winthrop but they go to a different district, they have that right to go to that current district that they were at, or vice versa. If they were a student in Winthrop and then because of the homeless had to move to another community or go into a shelter somewhere else, they have that right to come back to Winthrop. So, and you correct me, but I believe it's the 2 communities are then responsible for that payment of, they share those costs to make sure that that student goes to that particular school. The DESE 2 years ago created, the legislature agreed to allow us to be reimbursed for the homeless at one point, and that has since not occurred over the last couple of years. But at one point it did, and we were able to reimburse some of that money. Moving to the next page on the operating budget. So you can see that the request that I put in is for $18,191,309.52. And that is for July 1st, 2016, June 30th, 2017. Winthrop High School expenditures by category. Majority, if you round up, 15 million of it is salaries. And the other expenditures is areas of about 3.5 million, which is instructional materials, technology, special education, student transportation, facility maintenance, and so on, the legal and all of those other areas. So that's how our pie is cut. If you look at the next slide on it, you will see that the expenditures by programs. So schools is a big major cut here because we have 4 schools that will take 82% of those expenses. They'll be broken down into that budget. And then you have special education, curriculum and instruction, operations, leadership, central office, and system-wide expenses. And these expenditures by programs, they tell you what is included under the schools, such as staff salaries, athletics, variable things like that. Special education, Office of Pupil Personnel, salaries for the district. So that's one thing I want to point out. So under the schools, you'll have special education teachers that are under that school. But then when you look at special education on that 8%, that consists of district level administrators and tuition costs for pupil personnel and students whose disabilities require the out-of-district placement. Curriculum and instruction, that covers the development of oversight of English language arts, math, science, social studies, world language, visual and performing arts, physical education, English language learners. Operations, of course, is our heating, cooling, utilities, and the building maintenance, student transportation, technology services, and so on, lunch programs, and student registration service. And then our leadership and central office, which is the office superintendent, legal counsel, financial operations, and human resources department. And then, of course, system-wide expenses, which include substitute teachers, instructional materials, classroom furniture, staff tuition, reimbursement, insurance costs, sick leave buyback, reproduction and printing, postage, and professional development. So the next page brings us to the staff full-time equivalent positions. And you will see that in fiscal 16, you'll see down that column, it tells you how many staff positions that we have for classroom and other teachers, educational support personnel, library media, school administration, clerical, custodial, school bus, nurses, information technology, and professional support staff and district administration. And then on fiscal 17, you will see some of those numbers have changed, and we will get into that as I move into why in some of those proposed budget items. Under administrative and support, custodial, secretary, librarian, and nurse and counselors, we broke this down under support staff and administration because we're now going back from 3 schools to 4 schools, and we wanted to make sure that in 2015 and 16, you'll see that you had 11, which William P. Gorman remains the same. Arthur T. Cummings, the secretary that was at Arthur T. Cummings in that 12 that you see, is now leaving to go to the middle school as part of that 10 at the middle school. And at the middle school, we've added a principal, an assistant principal. The secretary moves from the Cummings. Guidance counselor would move out from the high school back to the middle school. An adjustment counselor would go back. We've had 2 adjustment counselors currently at the high school. We would move one over to the middle school. You'll see there's a 0.5 for librarian. That's the media specialist, integrated media specialist that we're putting into the budget that we'd like to see happen. And that would be shared between the Winthrop High Middle School. We have to add another nurse to the high school, middle school. And then under custodial services, you'll see that there's 3.5 positions added. And what we're looking at the high school, middle school next year is we want to have 7 positions there. We want to have our senior custodian and then 6 junior custodians. And the reason in the past, we've always had 3 custodians per building out of the 4. And you may ask, well, we're growing on this area. And we are. We've learned over the course of 2 years that having 4 custodians in the William P. Gorman and in the Arthur T. Cummings and having 5 custodians at Winthrop High School has been very, very extremely helpful to making sure that we're getting the work done that we need to get done. We have a senior custodian, and because it's one school, we believe that 1 senior custodian could handle, instead of having 2 senior custodians, one for the middle and one for the high school, we believe it's much better utilized to have 1 senior custodian at Winthrop High School, middle school. And then gear the 6 junior custodians to work 2 in the daytime to assist with lunches and all of that work that needs to happen, as well as 2 in the nighttime. There'd be 4 custodians to clean the building. The reason why I accent that point is 3 years ago, when we were pushing for the Winthrop High School, middle school, there was a huge, huge nervousness from the community to say to us, you know, it's wonderful we build these buildings, but are we going to clean these buildings? Are we going to maintain these buildings? What are we going to do? And I sat there and I told the community, absolutely. We fought hard to make sure that we convinced our community that we were going to put our money into the maintenance that we needed to do. There's a position here that is also been added, which is the school operations manager, which will handle the maintenance component of not only the Winthrop High School, middle school, but also the Arthur T. Cummings and the William P. Gorman School, in making sure that all of our assets are now recorded, they've been put online, and all our pre-maintenance and maintenance things are scheduled appropriately. What's important for that, and the reason why people might say, well, geez, do we need that much in the maintenance? But we as a town have earned a point and more for a percentage that's going to help all of our taxpayers with that reimbursement for the new middle school, high school project. And so they will be coming to check You know, we can say these things and they can say, okay, that sounds good on paper, and so we're gonna give you this 0.5 towards your reimbursement, but then over the next 2 years, they're gonna come and audit these areas to say, did they really do that? Are they doing that? And if they are, great, and if not, then they're gonna take that reimbursement away. So it was important that we maintain that. Moving over to grant funds. You will see that we get federal grants, state grants, we get private, and others. The state grants, federal grants is your, primarily is your Title I, Title IIA, which is on the next page, but don't worry about that right now, Mr. Woods. Your state grants is your circuit breaker. Circuit breaker is known quite a bit around here. First thing I did when I became superintendent was learn what circuit breaker meant. Always thought it was something you just took care of in your electrical box, but in this particular area, it's a huge reimbursement. I didn't mean to sound like Bernie Sanders. Sorry. It is it's an area that we benefit from because we pay out a lot of expenses for students with special ed for out of district, and this money reimburses us on that. But it's controlled. We don't get, when people think we're getting all of that return that we spend on it, we're getting 75% or whatever the legislator at that time decides to give us of that percentage that we spent out there. Kindergarten Enhancement Grant, that's a grant that has been slowly decreasing through the years. The Kindergarten Enhancement Grant last year was cut by the governor, and thanks to our Speaker of the House, he was able to bring back what was at the mid-year last year when they do the 9C cuts. Sometimes they'll tell you in the 9C cuts, oh, we're not going to touch Chapter 70, we're not going to touch any of that stuff, but what happens is they'll touch these other areas that still affect us. And that was one of those that was reduced last year by $20,000, and then this year we were able to at least get it back for level funding. And then you have coordinated family and community. The thing to take a look at is you'll see on those, the federal grants, state grants, and the private monies, we are slowly losing some of that cash flow. That cash flow is going down instead of increasing, and that's what happens with grants. You know, one of the things that we're in a catch-22 when it comes to grants. And what I talk about that, what I mean by a catch-22 is that we should be taking the grant money and utilizing the grant money for added-on services, not for salary services. And when you use it for salary services because you're stuck and you say, geez, I need to use that for salary services right now, which is permissible, but what happens when that decreases, that causes an issue on it. So one of my goals has been to see if we can try to move these salaries from grant salaries into the salaries of non-grants so that when you do get a grant, you're able to utilize it to an even better potential. As you take a look, the private grants, we have a Comcast grant that we receive every year from Comcast, and that pays for our media specialist at the high school. And then we do get Viking Pride grants for our teachers, and they support funds for us and have been very supportive over multiple years. Other funds, we do have revolving funds, and those revolving funds are revenues from school lunch programs, school facility rentals, athletic and performing arts ticket sales, and other programs with revenues receipts are ongoing, and the district foresees revenues near prior year's total for fiscal year 16. You'll notice that in fiscal year 16, it's at $490 right now, but that's to date. That will probably come up anywhere where fiscal 15 was. And that is in the lunchroom area. We have noticed that there was a decrease in that particular area over the last couple of years. But if you recall, in the last 2 years, we've offered at the seniors, they've had an opportunity to have that senior perk, which means that they can, when they have a free period, they can leave. And I guarantee you a lot of seniors are probably having lunch outside of the school, or they're bringing lunch in. And so sometimes those nice things kind of get us on another end. So, but we're okay in those areas for now. So when you put all of those expenditures together, what does Winthrop how much are we paying per pupil expenditure according to the state? And this is according to the state for 13-14. They do not have 14 or 15 yet on the state, but the state says that we have increased from 11,627 per pupil expenditure from year 2010-11 to $12,310 in year 13 and 14. But the state average has also increased from 13,354 per pupil expenditure to 14,581 over the last to 2014. So you can see that we are $2,000 below the state level of pupil per pupil expenditure. And that they basically break that down in the next slide, where they show how that expenditure has been. Classroom specialist teachers, you'll see that amount. It's got other teaching services, which consist of, I believe, librarian, technology, professional development, instructional materials, guidance, testing, pupil personnel, operations, maintenance, insurance and retirement is a big piece of the pie, administration, and instructional leadership. So what's important is at the end of the year, we are required by the state to put in and do an end-of-the-year budget, not an end-of-the-year report, which is, I believe, the Title 19, is it 19, that report on 19A, or however they get all the numbers mixed up. But we submit that in, and that's where they take this from, is they break down exactly how our expenditures were. The next slide shows you our students demographics. Winthrop is reflected in our students, the diversity. More than 18 languages are spoken at home by Winthrop Public Schools families. The most frequent spoken non-English language are Spanish, Portuguese, Arabic, and Albanian. You'll see down in the enrollment by race and ethnicity, we still have a dominant amount of white, 85. Our Hispanic is 10.4, Asian 0.7, and African American 1.7, and then multi-race, non-Hispanic 2.2, and Native American 0.3%. And you can compare us to the state on those items. The enrollment by selected population, we have first language that is not English. We have 16.4% in our student population compared to 19% of the state. English language learners, we've increased to 6.3% compared to 9% of the state. Student disabilities, with disabilities, we are at 17% and the state is at 17.2. I want to point that out for a second because for years, our students with disabilities percentages was much, much higher on that. We used to be, at one time, over the course of years, we were at 30%, and we have decreased those numbers through the years. And I have to give a lot of that tribute to response to intervention, to the works that have been implemented over the last 5 years at the William P. Gorman School and the Arthur T. Cummings School, to be able to really take a look at those students, and they don't have to go out and require the services because they're getting that intervention when it's needed. So the work that they foresaw during those days are now coming to see that our numbers are slowly decreasing with those areas. High needs, we have 40.1% compared to 43.5% at the state. And what high needs is, of course, high needs is areas of economic issues and multiple issues. And then economically disadvantaged. And that's the key that I just want to talk about for a second. Economically disadvantaged, we're at 22.9 compared to the state at 27.4. In the past few years, and this is where a big major change is coming down the road, which is, you'll know that when you had your kids would come home, we would send home those free and reduced forms, and people would fill out that, and the lunch forms, or if you didn't want to fill it out, we'd ask you to fill it out. And the free and reduced numbers were important because if our numbers were rising, that meant our Title I funds would rise as well. That was coming back to the community. They've changed that moving forward right now, and we're having some big discussions with the local legislation on this to try to make it so that it doesn't change. But they're looking now to only respond to students that are on directive services, which means that they have been earmarked in welfare or they have other emotional issues that are going on through the state. And so those types of services are what we may only be refunded for or reimbursed for, as opposed to the free and reduced numbers. If you move to the next, enrollment history. Our enrollment has decreased over the last 2 years. It's not something that we did not foresee. We thought, I mean, there was conversation when we were going to go into the swing space. If you take a look at grade 10 and 11, down at the 15, 16 enrollment, staff allotment, you will see that there is a pretty, 118 to 122 in that class area. We believe that some of that was when we went into the swing space 2 years ago, that some folks decided they didn't want to go through this type of space. They chose to go elsewhere. We've also, our numbers for incoming kindergarten students last year was at 129. So that number was a dramatic drop down for incoming kindergarten from 2 years ago where we were at 145. So there are, we can see some of those types of things. And that's the other part that we deal with the Massachusetts School Building Authority when they say, okay, this is how many kids we're going to let you build for, which is 970, and we say, how do you get to that figure 970? And what they do is they project over a course of time what your numbers should be, and they show when you're going to probably have the dip, and they look at how many students have been born into the community and things like that. And they actually are showing us right now as a decrease in enrollment as we move on. What's important to note is that fiscal 15-16 class enrollment and staff allotment is as of October 1st. And these are the numbers that we put in right at October 1st. Now, those numbers do change throughout the year. And so some of the enrollment has changed, it has increased from classes. But because it's after October 1st, we don't get that money because we only get it from those October 1st numbers. So sometimes when staff increases and it happens after a certain time, that's why October 1st numbers are very, very important to all communities, because the governor uses those numbers to project his budget when he's putting it out there. If you move, we're projecting class sizes for 2016 and 2017. We're looking at kindergarten, we believe 20, grades 1 and 2, 20, grades 3 and 5, 23, 6 through 8. We're looking at about 20. This is just projections. And 9 through 12, about 20. It also depends upon what subject it is, where you're at, and all of those things when you get into certain classes. But based on student enrollment, and based on what you have for teachers, that's what the projection comes out to be. If you look at the miscellaneous number of incoming choice students, right now we currently have 13 students that choose to come to our schools from other communities. We have 2 students that choose to go out of our school to another community of school choice. We have 16.6 students attending charter schools. The international is incorrect. There's 8 students that we had this year for international students. What happens is that we do have some students that come at the beginning of the year, they come for a half a year, and then other students who stay for the full year. So we had 4 that stayed for the full year, but we've had students that came and then they change or they continue on. 318 students are covered under 766 funding. However, there's an additional 17 students that attend out of district, and those are special ed. And then right now, as I said earlier, we're at 9 students that are listed in the homeless category. The town of Winthrop budget, when you look at the town of Winthrop budget as of fiscal 16, was $44,700,000. That's, when you think about that and you compare yourselves to other communities, it's not a lot of money. Winthrop doesn't have a lot of revenue that comes into Winthrop. So it's based on our tax brackets, it's based on that. So that's the pie that you're dealing with. And when you look at the pie of the fiscal year 16 town of Winthrop budget, as you'll see, you see that the education was 42% of that budget. But then, of course, we are included in the employee benefit part component on that as well. But that 22% represents the whole town, but I would say that we are a majority of that because we have the most employees in the district. And then you'll see debt service, other, DPW, public safety, and general government. So with all that said, then I got to what I'd like to go a little over what I was looking at with the highlights of the budget. This page, you may have this page that I had sent out to you. One of the things that we were looking at and talking as we move forward, we currently have 2 guidance counselors at Winthrop High School. We'd like to increase it to 3 guidance counselors. Over this course of the 2 years, we had 3 because of the consolidation of 8 through 12. But moving forward, we know that one of those guidance counselors is scheduled to go back to the Winthrop Middle School because that's where that person was for 6, 7, and 8. So we'd like to increase an additional guidance service for our 9 through 12 students. We believe that that's an area of dire need for these students. We also currently have 5 math teachers, and we would like to increase an additional math teacher at Winthrop High School because Winthrop High School, we've learned, I think we've learned in some ways the hard way on it. Gail Conlon, I appreciate the work and efforts that Gail Conlon has done, and we went from having 2 maths down to 1 math, and then thank goodness Mr. Crombie has brought back the foresight to bring us back to 2 maths in our sophomore year because it is really helping our students excel where they need to be. And I think for that year that we missed that, those 2 years, I think that showed us some of the dips that we didn't need to have. We need a media integrated specialist, as I talked about earlier, that would share. We schools operation manager, which I feel is an important component because, as I talked about it earlier, it will help in the percentage reimbursement area, as well as we need to make sure that these buildings stay in the great shape that they were built to be in. And it was a commitment that I made to this community, and I will stand strong on that commitment. We've added custodial support. Obviously, we've added a principal. We've returned a principal back to the Winthrop Middle School. We've returned an assistant principal back to the Winthrop Middle School in this budget. We do have to add an additional nurse. We need to have 4 nurses, and contractually, in the contract, it states that there will be a nurse for every school. Not particular building, but every school. So we need to make sure that a nurse is there. The Arthur T. Cummings would like to add a math coach that is funded in this budget. One of the things that we've talked about a lot throughout this year is our need to improve in the math area. And we have focused, as you see, with an additional math teacher at the high school and a math coach at Arthur T. Cummings. We are adding a preschool teacher at the Winthrop High School. We believe that that will pay for itself because those students, that'll be a fully regular ed preschool student of 15 students at the school. And as a matter of fact, that right now registration is ongoing for that currently. Because of that course, we're adding in our health department a child development course. That's not costing us anything because that'll be part of the health curriculum, but students have that opportunity to choose to take that class. And so at the high school, not only will the students who participate, the preschool students who participate in that program, they will have a preschool teacher, a preschool an ESP to assist in that, and they will also be assisted by students in a learning lab of high school students that will be doing childcare in that classroom. So it looks to be an exciting opportunity for our students. We're returning at the William P. Gorman, we see the need to add more additional preschool classrooms, but we wanted to add a full integrated preschool day. So therefore, we would have 8 model students, and then this also, by allowing this, it also allows us to add additional services that we need at the school because those funds will come in and support that. At the middle school, we've had too many years of 7th grade, and in the past of 8th grade, where we've shared teachers teaching. You know, there'll be a science teacher, and then they'll have to teach a course of social studies in the 7th or 8th grade, or they're an English teacher and they have to teach a course of social studies. Well, at the 8th grade level, For the past couple of years, we've been able to maintain two teams of 4 teachers. Excuse me, sorry. It's probably Gary Scomo saying I'm talking too much. So what's happened here is that I have put together in the 6th grade 2 teams of 3 teachers, which in that 6th grade you'd have a math teacher, an English teacher, and a science teacher, and then they would all share in teaching one history course in the 6th grade. However, in the 7th grade, you would have a full social studies, English, math, and science teacher on each team. Because right now, you have one team that has that and one team that doesn't have that. And I think that's an inequity to our students. So we wanted to make sure that we provide that. We need to increase our PDD services are still increasing. We have children that are coming into the district that require more and more services, and we would rather create those classrooms in our school as opposed to having to send them out. We've increased technology funds at all levels. What I'm talking about that is that we've increased media integrated specialists at the high school. We've also increased funding for the principals at the other 2 schools to bring in more Chromebooks if they need be, and other things to get us online to better serve our students. We've increased assessments in math and ELA programs. We've talked about that, as you've heard our principals talk about that in previous sessions. We've increased music to full-time for all schools. We were able to benefit when we had the consolidation of the 3 schools. We had a full-time music teacher at the William P. Gorman School that originally was only part-time there. And we had no music teacher at the high school. Well, because we moved 8th grade up, we were able to have music at the high school. We had a full-time music teacher at the Cummings School, and we had a full-time teacher at the William P. Gorman. We also have an instrumental teacher. And that program has grown from no instrumental students to well over 150 instrumental students. And we need to continue those programs to grow. So what we've done here is, knowing that Miss Lamina would go to the middle school, that opened up that we do need the Cummings to have a full-time music teacher. So we've added that into the budget. In regards to the instrumental, Mr. Sherwin, now a lot of those students who are taking instrumental are moving on to the middle school primarily for 6, 7, and 8. They need to have an instructor there, so we would move Mr. Sherwin to the to the middle school / high school, I guess. But he would primarily be working there with those students on instrumental and band and various groups. The high school music teacher, right now, we see the need for 3 classes. And so what we'd like to do, we also realize that we're going to have a need for 4th and 5th grade to continue on taking instrument classes. So we want to utilize the high school music teacher to teach 3 classes at the high school and then come down and do 4th and 5th grade music. So we're trying to utilize our faculty as best we can on that. And the reason why it may work in that particular area is that the high school's on a rotating schedule, and when you teach instruments at the elementary level, you try to put that on a rotating schedule so that students aren't missing the same subject on a weekly basis. ELL teacher services, currently we have 2 at the William P. Gorman, 2 at the Arthur T. Cummings, 1 at Winthrop High School, and the last thing we need to do is decrease those services. We're only growing in that area, so we've increased that service at Winthrop Middle School. We've increased classroom libraries for grade 3. We have grade 3 coming back over, and Mr. Herity wanted to make sure that all his classes now have libraries in them, and he wants to make sure that grade 3 is set. And we've increased funding towards the athletic trainer. And I'd like to take a couple of seconds on the athletic budget as well, is that we've increased in the athletic budget, we've looked at the deficits that we come to at the end of the year in regards to user fees and various things like that. So one of the things we put in an athletic trainer, and we were paying $10,000 towards the athletic trainer, when the athletic trainer technically at the end of the year, we pay $10,000 out of the budget for it, but it really is coming in about $29,000. So we need to fund that. So we've increased funds towards that. We've also increased funds towards some of the monies that we put in towards athletics. For example, we have a line item that's $26,000 for athletics. We've increased that in the budget to $52,000. As well as we've increased the line item of the spring coaches from $55,000 to $60,000. So there's an increase of about $51,000, and that's put in there so that we had those discussions this morning to try to do our best to keep the user fees at where they're at. And so those are some of the items that we've also implemented. Next year, we're looking to increase kindergarten from a 5-hour, 15-hour day to a 6-hour day. Kindergarten students next year will receive all special services, music, art, computers, physical education, and academic support. As I said, we are looking to do 2 preschool programs that are full day that we would increase. William P. Gorman would like to remain on their 5-day rotation. You may wonder what is the importance of a 5-day rotation, but if you have a young child who's in preschool through or kindergarten through 3rd grade and you're a parent, or second grade, and you want to know what day your child needs to wear sneakers, and you want it to be every Thursday, it's much better to be every Thursday than be every other Thursday or a Monday or things like that when it's a 6-day schedule. It's also better suited for our children to get them in a strong routine as they go along. But that was money that we had to make sure that we kept those people on. Arthur T. Cummins is going to transition into a 5-day schedule, and I have to give credit to Mr. Harity on his creative scheduling on this, because Mr. Harity, just so that you know, when we looked at, we're going to need another specialist in order for him to have 5 specialists to do that 5-day schedule, he said, nope, I've got a better idea on this, I believe, is that I'm going to build my 4 specialists into that 5-day routine so that once a quarter, our students will receive not only once for that specialist, but twice that week of that specialist. So they'll pick up an extra music class for a quarter, or an extra phys ed class for a quarter, or an extra computers, and so on. Now comes the next part on it. We've taken a look at it, and here's where I will say to you that we've had multiple discussions on these. And these are a proposed as we go forward on it. In my budgets, as I looked at 18.1 still does not cover us for all our current personnel. There's no question, and I will say it right out here. Yes, we did have a both the union and the school committee came to terms on an agreement moving forward over the next 3 years on this contract. I'm proud to say that that was a solid contract. I think that Winthrop needed that contract to move forward for teacher retention and to show the growth that we did for our teachers and our ESPs and all our employees that have worked over the course of the years. And, it was time for those things to happen. But what happens is we have to make some decisions on those types of things as we move forward. And in talking right now, we were looking at currently, should we go with 7 or 6 kindergarten teachers or 6 first grade teachers? And in the end, Mrs. Pearson and I, for now, have looked at to say we would go with the 7 across the board in K1 and 2, but that would reduce the kindergarten paras at this time. We were looking at currently special ed paras. We have 2 per building that we may have to reduce on that. But as I stated today, and I've talked to the union today as well in all of these things, it's not our intention. We don't want to do these things. We will do everything that we can to work towards trying to restore these as we go along. You have to understand the budget makes a dramatic change from now until August 1st or even September 1st. There are things that happen that occur, and sometimes these reductions don't have to be those reductions. But as of today, when I'm trying to put together a budget that moves forward and people ask specifics, well, how are you going to pay for it? I'm trying to explain how we would pay for it. In the, you see grade 3, grade 4, and grade 6, what we've done there is Mr. Harity has elected to have 6 third grade classrooms and 6 fourth grade classrooms and 4 specialists in order to make sure that he could fund a math coach, because he believes that he'd like to see more support come into the classroom for the teacher in that area than just not have that at all. We have looked at speech positions right now. We've looked at OT as a possible reduction in those areas. There were some unfunded requests. As you know, currently we have 3 CETs, which are chair people. They also handle our special ed department for the buildings. And there was a request for an additional one to go back to the 4. And at this time, we are not funding that request. There was a request for an in-house supervisor. We're not requesting funding that. And then there's been some additional sped services that currently, right now, are not funded. The athletic stuff I'm going to pass on because I think the committee today has, they want some more time to talk about that, and I think that they've come to some good discussions on it. There has been the possibility, we currently have an activities user fee at the high school that's $100 a year for any activity that you go into it. Currently, I was looking at it and saying, geez, do we have to increase that? And I'd still like a little more time to look at that as well. In the past, we've had a bus fee. In the last 2 years, we have not. And part of that was because of the swing space. The swing space was paid for that. But that money will not be there in the future. And so therefore, if we want to continue to have the bus services that we provide during the day, we may have to return to that $150 bus fee. Other than that, that is where I'm currently at. You'll see here, I've given you a line item budget that breaks down everything that I've talked about, and I guess I'm ready for the questions.
All right, so for the committee, any comment or questions for Superintendent Massaro? Mr. Holden?
I have notes on the pages, so just bear with me.
Go right ahead. And I also, if it's okay with you folks, if I do have my leadership team here, so if there's, I may ask them to answer with me.
Yes.
And my leadership team will be there next Monday night, with the exception of Ms. Peterson, she's away.
Oh, gosh.
Okay, and just going by page,
Sure,
how
go right
it's
ahead.
presented. Page 4, the transportation, the homeless. You budgeted 83,000, and then this year.
That's what we spent, was 83,000.
Yeah, but
We didn't
fiscal year
budget it.
16
We-
is 13,000.
Right, but, so just so that, if I may, I'm sorry.
Yep.
We didn't, in fiscal year 15, we didn't budget 83,000. We had only budgeted 20,000, but the expenditure, the total expenditure was 83.
Okay, so 16.
Right, this year we actually budgeted 80,000, but
Yes,
to
I-
date, we're only at 13,000.
Okay, that's what I saw.
Right.
And I'm still, like you said earlier, I thought I read in the Globe that it was going to be 100% reimbursable.
Well,
And
we're
I'm trying to
hoping,
fi-
but
that's
they
a-
put that off and they keep it until
Well, they publicize it that it's going to be,
So that would be
reimbursable,
great,
but-
because what we would do with that, when we return, if we get the homeless money that comes back in, reimbursement, is we set it up exactly as we did with the circuit breaker. So we fund that for just homeless vehicle support.
Superintendent, when would we find that out, or maybe Susan can answer that? What month during the school year do we find out what the reimbursement would
We
be?
won't find out about last year's until the spring.
Right. And then we get, well,
If
one
we
year we
get
got a
it.
check. We didn't even know about it, so we
Right.
just.
And let me just, I meant to say before I started asking questions, my intent here is not to reduce our budget. It's to either look at reallocating or to justify asking for more money. Oh, Jen?
So I just wanted to weigh in. So last year, in that number that you see in the 83,168, we had 18 students that were homeless that at one point or another we were doing. And this year, we have 9, so half. And when we were talking at this time last year, if you remember me saying that it's just, I don't think we anticipated that at that time we were going to have that many students that found themselves and their families in that situation, that made the cost to be what it was at that time. And this year, certainly we planned for it, and that's why we budgeted that $80,000, and just at this point in the year, we don't have that.
Yeah,
number of
I'm not
students.
begrudging anyone that money to go to a district that they're comfortable with. My concern is just not getting the reimbursement that you're reading in the paper that we're getting, and, maybe that can go to.
Well, but if we paid 83,000 last year, hopefully if they're gonna reimburse us that 100%, then that would be a wonderful gift to come back, and that would help us moving into the future budget.
And I'm asking, how do we go about pushing for that, asking about it? What's the story with
Through the legislation.
Not the DESE, or,
I'm sorry, Michael, can Michael?
Oh, sure.
So one of these lines is the McKinney-Vento reimbursement, which is a line in the state budget. And the way it works is every school district in the Commonwealth gets funding from that. So if that line is only funded at, say, 30%, which I believe it was in FY15, then everyone gets 30% of what they submitted. So it's not only that, you know, we have our expenditures and those can be whatever they are, but the total expenditure across the state is fixed by the legislature, and so we're only getting our portion of that. So it's not really something that we can control. It's not a question of us filling out an application on time. It's a question of the state funding this line.
Yeah, no, I understand that, you know, what the state does is far different than what they put in the paper.
Mhm.
Because you read in the paper, it was going to be 100% reimbursable,
Okay.
which is not, and that's what should be in the paper, that it's not.
So
Anything
what we
else?
do is we reach out to our legislator, because the legislation is the ones that make those decisions.
Right, page 9, on the revolving funds. Is user fees part of those revolving funds that are taken in?
Yes.
They are, okay.
Can I just ask, go back to the
Yes.
transportation? So, looks like from a budgeting perspective, you budgeted 80,000 for out of district as well as for homeless.
We did.
Correct.
But there's half as many homeless in the homeless categories go out of district. I'm just trying to get my arms around why.
There's
We
no way to
why would
do
it
that.
be
budgeted
half?
on what we spent last year,
No way to know.
because we wanted to make sure we were covered for this year.
Okay.
And you'll see on the state budget, when the state allocates us, they will allocate on what we spent last year on certain things. So for example, school choice, they'll say, oh, you had 13 kids last year, so that's what you have. Now, we may have more, and so eventually when they audit it, they'll say, oh, no, they get more than that.
Okay.
But when they send out those initials. So in this, we felt that it was best to do that on our end, because we anticipated, to be honest, that our homeless was gonna just keep increasing. We're happy to report that it has decreased, but it's only February and we don't know what could occur and certain things. It's the transportation cost that comes up, and even though we have 9 students that are homeless, as I stated earlier, only 2 of those students currently right now are requiring services to be transported, and that's why our expenses are down.
So if that
Miss-
trend continued, then we'll be way over budgeted in that particular.
We would be, that's correct.
Mr. Perrin,
So we have, what is it, 13, where is that? I'll get it.
037?
So that's what we've got
That's
the
actual.
actual cost right now.
Right, that's actual for this year. So, for
But
example,
what
so,
if it increases?
That's
I mean,
through January only.
January.
right, it will increase, I'm sure, at some point when we put everything in, but we're at, last year at this time, we knew that we were already at like 50,000, and we were like, uh-oh, here we go. And I remember we talked about that quite a bit to not only school committee, but also with the FinCom, about you just don't know what's gonna happen on them. Same thing comes with the out-of-district. So yes, we may have had a reduction in the homeless to say that that's what's gonna help us, but we've had an increase on transportation and out-of-district because of students have changed where they're gonna go or certain things like that.
Yeah.
And we can, we don't know if more people are going to come back or more people are going to go out. And we also don't know if they're going to go to Everett or Framingham for the transportation costs as well. I
Right.
mean,
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand it.
Yeah.
If we get into a situation where we're looking for places to reduce a little bit.
absolutely.
Page
But
10.
unfortunately, though, I just want to make a quick note, Jen.
And I was going to
Yeah.
ask if I could.
What's happened this year is the homeless is reduced way down. However, our other transportation for our special ed students has gone up because
So they-
we've had a problem with getting drivers for our vans, so we've had to use outside services. So the money that we're not spending in homeless has to be moved. That's why we had a budget transfer, and it has to be moved over to the out of district. And actually, we have one outside place doing the kids to the high school.
Right, so last year, we actually had 4 drivers that were working for us, for the Winthrop Public Schools, and this year, we only have 2, so they've,
Not for lack of
So
trying.
it costs us
Correct.
more for hiring an outside service than it does to hire our own drivers.
Okay, let me move on from
Uh,
transportation.
Page 10, we discussed this earlier with the other group that we met at 5 o'clock. the per pupil expenditure.
Oh, yeah, ask that question, because I might get a better answer.
With reduction, I mean, with the reduction of staff possibly, does that change the amount between the statewide, I mean, right now, Winthrop is at, 2013-14, the latest figures. Winthrop was at $12,310 per student expenditure, where the state average was $14,581. So by that reduction, is that gap going to increase? Also, contract settlements is naturally, the cost has gone higher. Does that mean that the expenditure per student goes higher? Is, I guess, question one. And the other question is, if grants diminish, does that make the gap bigger because there's less money spent? I mean, I'm trying to get this per pupil expenditure by what we're doing, this committee. Are we increasing the gap or minimizing the gap?
Well, see, the way I look at it, and I could be totally wrong on this, and maybe Michael, you.
Mr.
By the way, I
Perez has a
forgot.
good
I
explanation.
apologize. I forgot to introduce. Michael's part of
Yeah.
our leadership team as well. Michael Perez, on this,
Right, Joe.
and yes, and Mr. Woods, our curriculum person who helped put all of this work together. Sorry, Mr. Woods. But if you look at next year, if we went with what we said, 276, and you divide that into the 18 million, I would imagine that would come up with a higher percentage of pupil expenditure per pupil spending. But
So, there are also costs that are not, like in the presentation where it's the percent of the town budget, the 42% is schools, that 42% is not what this is based on. This is based on the annual reporting to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, which includes some additional costs. It includes that 22% the benefits. It includes the portion of those costs for the schools. It includes some indirect costs that are not part of the school department
right, but
budget,
they're part of the Chapter 70
but are part of the formula.
chargebacks.
So it's not direct that, okay, the school department budget is 17 million or 18 million. That's not all that this is calculating, because this is pulling from other things that are outside of the school department budget but are still education related.
Just to make it simple, for me at least,
Mhm.
what moves this gap closer and further away? What, in your opinion, what are the top 2 or 3 things that diminishes the gap or increases the gap? Whether it's staff reduction, contract negotiations, school building maintenance, what moves this?
So the problem is every expenditure moves the gap, and that's on a statewide basis and our basis. So if our health insurance costs go up, then that's going to mean more health insurance expenditures as for the school department. So that would be higher per pupil expenditures, but that wouldn't be something that you
It's not a
would
program.
necessarily want to, really hang your hat on and say we're spending more on students, because it's not really,
Okay.
a direct classroom-related expenditure. So the problem is there are lots of external factors that are significant in this. When you look at the employee benefits portion on the per pupil expenditures, that is a significant chunk, and that is something that we absolutely need. We can't hire or maintain quality teachers without offering them comparable benefits to what they could receive in other districts, but it's not, the direct services aspect of it.
So you really can't look at that number and say that Winthrop's not supporting its students as much as anyone else, because everyone has that,
That's correct.
It's
Right.
deceiving.
it's
It
deceiving.
is
Yes,
deceiving.
deceiving.
Because there's a lot buried in that, and there's the question of the indirect charges, which are town expenditures made on behalf of the schools. So those aren't directly a part of the school budget. Now, in those calculations, we don't know what other districts are including or not including, because the calculation, there are lots of things that we do that are on the town budget that impact the school, like the treasurer collector's office. That benefits the school, and so we allocate a portion of that in the DESI report for the per pupil expenditures. I don't know if other districts are doing that same calculation, so the gap is important and it's real, but it's not the whole story.
All right, thank you very much. Page 17. Just these are the additions or highlights.
Yep, go ahead.
The math teacher at the high school, what discipline? Is that geometry, trigonometry? What math teacher are we looking at?
Well, that we don't know yet.
Okay.
You know, as we go along and plan our sections for next year, we'll have a better idea of where the need is gonna be. If it were this year, it would be Algebra 2. But as we go into next year, that could change.
Now, I thought Algebra 1 and 2 were down at the middle school level, so that's why I'm a little confused. I thought we had pushed Algebra 1 and I thought Algebra 2 down to the middle school level.
But we have 8th grade here, we're currently right now, so.
Right, so I'm looking at this next year's budget
Right.
for the high school,
So
so,
Algebra 2's at the high school.
but Algebra 1 is still at the
Still
middle
at the
school?
8th, right.
Yes.
Only partial.
Some students. Some students.
Okay, I'm confused. So, what's at the middle school
So right now we offer
for next year?
for next year at the middle school.
7th, 6th, and 7th.
Pre-algebra in 7th grade, some students take algebra, those pre-algebra students take algebra in 8th grade. So
Okay,
the advanced students in 7th and 8th grade take pre-algebra and algebra.
okay, so then Algebra 2 kicks in at the high school. If not Algebra 1, then kids didn't take it.
Always sophomore year.
And I know we're still in negotiations with one unit, so, but it is in the budget, I just want to ask about it. The school's operation manager, is that something connected to the facilities person, or has something completely different?
That is connected with the facilities. So that person is not a member of the union. It's the school operations manager is to work under the facilities director, but it's primarily all for the school department. That
So
person will
it's one and the
oversee,
same person?
No, it's not one and the same
So it's a
person.
different,
It's a different individual. So you have Mr. Safuni, who's the facilities director, and then this person is coming on board that's just working for the schools.
okay, I know we threw a lot of terms, assistant facilities director.
It's kind of like an assistant
Okay.
facility, but we
And
call it a
what-
schools resource
What
operations.
is the,
Salary on that?
yeah,
Currently we've got it budgeted at 60,000. We're in the process of negotiating. I think that's going to be over on that. However, we do need to take, not the salary will be under that, but we also need to take into, there's some other things that we have to
Okay.
look at within the custodial stuff.
Mr. Holden, we're gonna make sure we have other people get to have a chance too.
I'm almost done. The preschool teacher,
Yes.
the program at the high
Yes.
school. So you have one at Fort Banks and one at the high school. Are they one and the same? Are they
No,
different?
no, the Fort Banks is different because the Fort Banks is a full day integrated. So there's, and you can probably talk a little about that if you'd like.
So the benefit of having the full-day integrated program over at the Fort Banks School is it's kind of like an added value for preschool students. It's also going to increase our capacity to enroll the special education students in the programs that are ideal for them. So the integrated model is going to feature 7 special education students and 8 tuition general education students. And so they will pay the same tuition rate that will be charged over at the high school. The high school is different, not in the number of hours. They both have the same number of hours. The difference is it's not an integrated model, so you're realizing 15 straight tuitions on that.
Oh, you've got to oversee that program at the high school?
No,
Okay.
No.
Is that this one at the high school, is this a mandated program you're being innovative with? Or?
no, it's not mandated. It's
Okay.
innovative that we put in as part of our educational plan. And it was the MSBA, they built a whole classroom for it because they endorsed it.
Okay.
And it was a response to vocational training.
Right.
Okay, and you can let me know them later. What's the cost factor? What is this going to be? You can let me know later.
Which one? On the
The
cost?
to put this program into the high
The
school.
preschool, the
what is this
cost
gonna
factor
It'll be
was-
self-sustaining.
It will self-sustain itself. So the preschool program will be, you'll have a teacher and an ESP that we will pay for. But the tuition itself, if you have 15 tuitions at $8,000 for the year, because it's 178 days, that equals $120,000, and it certainly covers for those two employees as well as materials and stuff.
Okay, I didn't know what the
Yeah.
tuition was.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Actually, it's not.
And
It's very competitive to where we're at on it because it's full day for the full year.
and the last thing for transportation. I mean, is it time to look at again? Saying, are we losing money, making money? Should we go back to privatizing? Should we look at
You mean
a
the
combination of both?
You mean the bus service?
The
not-
bus service and all around transportation. I mean,
Okay.
if we're outsourcing for special ed because we don't have enough drivers, but then we're saving money in salaries versus, I know a lot of times you see Healy around when you're saying, where's our bus, you know,
Right.
breakdowns,
My
maintenance.
only concern on here again, I feel we're in a catch-22 on that. We've appreciated the gifts, and we've actually got the buses running to a point now where they're running well on it. If you go to take that away, it's certainly going to increase your athletic cost again, because now you're going to outsource for you're going to primarily do it for all the athletics. As far as the day-to-day getting students in, that may not be as expensive, because all you would do then is require just a run from the Point Shirley, which is all we're required to do. But I worry about what those costs would look like from an athletic perspective of constantly, after hiring out.
Yeah. I mean, my only concern, the last comment is, at the end of next year saying, we're spending $450,000, we're losing that much money each year with transportation, where if we privatized it, would have been, so if there's, I'm leaving that up to
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, we've looked at, there are times when I want to take those buses and just, I go crazy over those
Okay.
buses,
We're
but
gonna move on.
it is what it is. I think we've done better with them than we have without them.
Thank you. Mr. Vecchia?
Just a question back on the facilities maintenance. That, the 232, 335, does that include all of the new positions of janitors and the facilities manager?
Yes,
It's just salaries?
just salaries, correct.
Mr. Capabianco?
Yeah, I'll be brief first. I just want to thank you for the hard work you put into this. We really appreciate it. I know I do. I just quickly want to go over some questions I had.
Sure.
Are we anticipating any more local grants or federal grants? Anything additionally coming in?
Not that I'm aware of at this time.
Okay.
I mean, it doesn't mean we can't look at certain things, but,
And then in terms of, I just want to let you know, I'm very excited about the new high school guidance council possibility, new math teacher, the music program. Eventually, I'd like to see a high school band come back. I know we're working on.
We're almost
on
there.
that. Yeah, and I think that's great. I want to try to find a way, obviously, to avoid as many reductions as we can. Are there any teachers we anticipate retiring that maybe we won't have to fill that? And just one thing I would like, if we go back and take a look at this, I think ESPs and paraprofessionals are extremely important. So that's something I'd like to take a look at, avoiding that many reductions there.
okay, thank you.
President Driscoll?
Just a couple of questions. First, really good job on this, everybody. I think it was really well done, thorough. I asked for a lot of data points. It was all in here, so it was really helpful when we started to look at it. It was really good. Utilities. So I was kind of expecting that we'd see something different because we have a new building and it's all changing. And I think what's in the budget is basically last
It
year's
is.
numbers.
Because we don't know exactly yet what to project on that.
So
That is one of those hidden little items that we're not sure. So I've asked Susan and myself to touch base with Tina Stanislavski and the school building crew to kind of give us what they project would be our costs in there.
That's what I was going to suggest.
We're hopeful that we should see some savings on that, even though we've put that amounts in there, but I'm not positive yet, so we kept it at the amounts that we currently did to fuel this building.
Yep.
But of course, it's a bigger building, but if you'll notice, the building is a very green building that's been built, and when you drive down the main street now, you see those, what are they called, Karen, the outside each classroom?
I don't know what they call
Yeah,
it.
but they also absorb the sun and absorb, they're
No.
They're called sunshades, right, but they do some great stuff for us, and there's a lot of stuff in there that's supposed to help us, but I'm skeptical about that.
Well, that's what I was thinking, that between the state-of-the-art building that we're going to have and the fact that the price of gas, natural gas is down 70% in a
Correct.
year.
Correct.
If there's an opportunity
Right.
to reduce that.
But I guess we get skeptical about it
You're
sometimes
giving me a heart
because
attack to
I know,
reduce
I
it
know.
right
because
now.
the reason I say that is that a couple of years ago, when we went through all of those energy efficient things that we did, our bills tripled because of the colds and certain things. So it's one of those things where we're just trying to get a better sense on.
The last thing I'll
Yep.
bring up is the international students. Is there an opportunity to grow that program?
Yes, there is. Yes, there is. So I'm glad you did bring that up. The international program has a huge opportunity for us to grow, and that money in that program could be utilized towards high school. It can actually be utilized to wherever we, see fit to be utilized. But currently this year we had 8 students, 4 who did the full year, but 8, and that was a decrease down. And part of that reasoning was that last year when the registrations began, as you know, we had a change in administration, and because of that change in administration, we all of a sudden were not, we had to work to get recertified again at that point, which we did, and so then we brought in 8 students. Over the course of the year, I've worked very closely with educators. As you know, this past year I went to China and did some, meeting with students and recruiting and talking to students and all of that. We have made an agreement with educators that we would accept, we would like the program to grow to 20 students and possibly higher depending upon availability. And that is a great income that comes in because it's $12,000. We've increased that to $12,000 this year. And, that money comes right into us right off the bat as opposed. And the other good thing about it and the positive is that educationally it's wonderful for our students to learn with students from various countries. 2, it's 1 year. So it's not a commitment for the full high school, their time at the high school tenure. It's just that 1 year. And it also brings in, for families in the community that would like to host a student, I just think it's an all-around good thing. So we are working very closely to try to increase those numbers, and that would be
That's a
extra
great
revenue.
idea. Thank you.
Before we move on, I'd like to make a motion to extend the meeting past our 2-hour time limit that we voted in about a month ago.
I'll second.
So moved.
Second by, all in favor say, or any discussion on that? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? No, motion passes. All right, so now I don't have to watch the clock for the next 8 minutes. Mr. Superintendent, I would like to, along with what Mr. Campianco was saying, I'm wondering what we can do to have someone in the district looking for grants for us. I know that we do have a grant position now that's mostly taken up with one of the programs that they're running, but is there an opportunity anywhere in the district, in central office or somewhere, for someone to be helping us find grants for programs that we'd like to initiate or continue? And then second, I'm also concerned if our Title I services are reduced. We've made it, we've done a nice job of reducing the diagnoses and the special ed numbers, the percentages that you showed us earlier, and I think that one of the reasons that we've been able to do that was probably the Title I services that we offered. So it is a concern that we might be reducing that in some way.
If I may add, when I looked at the Title I services numbers projected, we increased our numbers, so that was a good sign to see. Now, whether or not that will fulfill into additional funding, I'm not sure yet. But I'm hopeful that it won't decrease the funding.
Mhm.
But those, unfortunately, they don't hit us until July on that funding, because that goes from August 1st to July 31st.
And then, do you think there's an opportunity for us someone to help us research more grants?
Yes. We will take a look at that.
Okay.
There are, that's something that we've been talking about in leadership too. There are people that will come and work for you and be solely funded through the grants that they receive. And I think that that's something that we may want to take a look at just for specifics for the schools. Because a lot of times we don't have the manpower to do all of that
Right.
work on it. And yes, we do have somebody that handles the current grants that we have, the Title I and, those types of grants, but they take the time frame of it. So I would like to explore that more, and see what we can do on that. If it's self-sufficient, self-funded, then let's do it.
Great. Anything else, Mr. Perry? Anything else, Mr. Holden? Did you have anything else?
No, yeah, I was mentioning the grant writer. Is Connie Moore, what role does Connie?
Connie's an ELL teacher.
Right, I mean, I know she was in the past.
Right.
A very enthusiastic
Yep.
individual looking for grants and applying for grants and getting grants, and that's something we can, talk to her about.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you again, and the leadership team as well. And Mr.
Yeah, if I
Perez.
could, I'd just like to add that, we wanted to put together a new type of proposal that was good, and a lot of the grunt work that really helped and assisted me was Susan Eccles, Frank Woods. We did quite a bit of the work to make sure that we got these categories, as well as the principals giving us this input. And I really appreciate all the hard work that my leadership team has done to, give you this proposal.
And just to review, at our next school committee meeting, there will be the public hearing.
That is correct.
So, okay, next we have personnel.
So-
Anything for us?
Under personnel, I did mention earlier that Mr. Curley has been appointed the middle school principal pending negotiations. Marianne Babine is the new guidance secretary at Winthrop High School. There are no resignations, no retirements. There is a postings, as you saw in the postings, there's postings for multiple kitchen help at the cafeterias and an additional bus driver, because we run into, when we get into the spring season in all of these areas, we need another driver to help us get through some of this stuff, so, and that's taken care of. There's no leave of absence.
Okay, I don't believe there's any unfinished business. We're back to public comments. Is there any public comment tonight? Oh, Mary Alice. Mrs. Sharkey, please stand up and state your name. And welcome. Welcome, come on up.
It's not with me. I just would like to,
You want to go sit over there?
then I have to try.
Okay.
I'll lose breath. I'll try. First of all, I want to say thank you, because I know the word had gotten out before vacation that there were going to be some elementary, probably preschool and kindergarten teachers that may be released. And it sounds like that may not be the case, and we're doing the best that we can. But I know we're still looking at ESPs, and I appreciate the fact that Tino mentioned that, and that we'll try to work on that. But I'm going to go back to Bill's question, if Bill, you don't mind, and then I'll ask Mr. Perez. When we're talking about per pupil expenditure.
Mrs. Sharkey, this is public comment, so we might not get a response tonight.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay.
I just wanted to make a statement that in FY08, as John had mentioned, there was, between the state and our district, there was $1,100 in this year to our last year, 2014-15. It is $2,200 difference. Now, we have to look at it realistically. If we look at in '08, that would have meant a difference of $2.1 million that I believe could have been in our district. And I know that's not realistic with the amount of revenue that we have. But also, and I'll say it later, but this year, if we look at it, we're talking about $4.2 million that have increased and have not come to our town. As Mr. Perez is saying, and he's totally correct, is that when we look at the pie, as far as the relationship of per pupil expenditures, every single district is different, because every single district prioritize what they find is the most important thing. But in most districts, that pie increases with money. Over the last 5 years, we have only increased funding for our schools to $361,000. Now, that's somewhat deplorable that here we have a brand-new school that is on the horizon, and our town average is $361,000. But to the positive, it has gone up. I won't say it hasn't gone up, but what it does is it goes up less each year. So it goes up, but less than it was the year before. Last year, in our budget, we asked for $18.3 million as our requested budget. Out of that 18.3, we got 17.4, which was $877,000 less than the requested budget. That 1.3 was really on target. It would have gotten us and moved us up. But again, realistically in our town, that's very difficult to do. But this year, we're asking for $18.1 million, which is $222,000 less than what we asked last year. And in that, it is a difference of us asking is $745,000. That number, ladies and gentlemen, is not unrealistic. Unrealistic means if we don't give our schools that money, the layoffs that you're hearing will happen. We cannot go around and taking averages of 360, 380, 425, and 450. Doesn't work anymore. And when we ask for our students to have improvement, and we keep giving them the mediocre amount of money, it's not going to happen. So I'm just trying to ask. I appreciate everything people do. It sounds like I'm not, but I do. But we really have to work on our governor. Our governor gave a state address that directed it to early childhood education, and yet initially we were talking about some layoffs in early childhood education. Bob DeLeo, same thing. He wants to, and Bob has supported us. But Eileen, you live there, I guess or not. But I'm not sure of how much money is going to be left in the kindergarten grant for next year. We did lose 20 or 25,000. Bob DeLeo put us 20. But I fear for next year, especially when the Chapter 70 money from this coming year is only $48,000 more than it was last year.
Thank you, Mrs. Sharkey. I appreciate your ongoing advocacy for the district. I really do. And your experience is helpful. Is there any more public comment tonight? Is there any public relations? Mr. Vecchio, do you have any public relations tonight? President Driscoll. Mr. Holden. Mr. Capabianco.
One quick thing, I just want to acknowledge, there was a thank you letter from Congresswoman Clark in the packet. I ran into her event in New Hampshire, and she actually approached me, asking us to keep her and her staff involved in any ceremonies for the new school or anything for that nature. So I just want to pass that message along.
I want to know what event that was at, Tino.
Yeah.
Mr. Perrin?
Nothing to me.
I would just like to remind the public that there is public hearing next meeting, and that will be happy to answer more questions than we're able to during public comments. So is there a motion to adjourn?
The motion.
Mr. Capabianco, I'll second it. All in favor, any discussion on the motion to adjourn? Probably not, right? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
5
Unanimous?
minutes after 8 o'clock.
Unanimously, thank you, everyone. Have a good night.